Some lost media is just forgotten. Old tapes, canceled shows, things that just slip through the cracks. But some of it, it's different. It's disturbing. I'm talking about footage tied to real-life tragedies, videos so unsettling they were buried on purpose, and broadcasts that seem like they were never meant to be seen in the first place. This media wasn't just lost, it was buried for a reason. If you like creepy videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now let's dive in to some of the most disturbing lost media ever uncovered. And before we begin, this video is for educational and informational purposes only. This video contains discussion of real-life violence and disturbing subject matter related to the Columbine High School tragedy. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The basement tapes. On April 20th, 1999, two students walked into Columbine High School with guns and explosives. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold killed 13 innocent people and themselves, injuring dozens more. It was one of the deadliest school shootings in American history, and it changed the country forever. The footage of what they did exists, but not in the way you'd expect. After the shooting, police found 5 videotapes recorded by Harris and Klebold in the weeks leading up to the attack. These weren't just kids messing around with a camcorder. These were detailed plans, rants about life, death, and revenge. They showed their weapons, listed names, and even laughed about what they were about to do. A Time magazine reporter, Tim Roche, got to watch them in late 1999 and wrote an article about it, calling them the basement tapes. That name stuck, and the public went insane trying to get a look. But even the victims' parents hadn't seen them. So Jefferson County, the county where Columbine's shooting took place, showed the tapes once, only to the families, and then locked them away forever. No copies, no leaks, just sealed in a vault. And that's haunted the internet ever since, because nobody outside that tiny circle has ever seen them. And according to officials, they don't even exist anymore. In 2015, it came out that Sheriff Ted Mink had actually destroyed the tapes back in 2011. They were gone, permanently. Whatever was on them, lost forever. And according to Tim Roche, the reporter who saw them, those tapes were some of the most disturbing things he'd ever watched in his entire career, which only made people want to see them even more. What made these two kids do something so horrific? What were they like when no one else was watching? The problem is, the tapes were never recovered. Once they were gone, that was it. Or at least, that's what people thought, because even though the tapes themselves were destroyed, the transcripts survived. Word for word accounts of what Harris and Klebold said and did, still out there. And that meant the mystery wasn't completely lost. People could finally know what was inside those tapes, and it was worse than anyone imagined. The first tape, evidence item number 265, March 1999. It opens in Harris's house. He and Klebold are sitting there with a bottle of Jack Daniels, laughing like this is some kind of party, almost like they're starring in their own movie. And honestly, that's what they wanted. Harris even says he hopes these tapes will be seen by the entire world one day, once our masterpiece is complete. They talk about how they got their guns and bombs, how easy it was to trick people into selling to them. Then, almost like it's nothing, they drop a classmate's name, Brandon Larson. Harris looks at the camera and says, "You will find his body." From there, it spirals into their philosophy, how they hate people, how society is broken, how no one understands them. It sounds like the kind of teenage rant you'd see online today, but darker, because these two already knew what they were about to do. The tape cuts out, static and jump cuts, then picks up again later that night. Now they're bragging about how many people they're going to kill, joking about who might direct a movie about their lives. Spielberg? Tarantino? They laugh like it's just one big joke. They even talk about credit card fraud, how easy it is to get bomb parts without raising suspicion. Harris looks straight into the camera and says he knows the police will see these one day. He laughs, saying they'll probably slice up the footage to twist what we're saying. And then it gets even darker. They talk about mailing copies of the tapes to 4 major news networks. Harris holds up his personal journal, calling it his writings of God. And that's how it ends. No dramatic outburst, no last laugh, just a calm, almost casual promise that what they're planning is going to shock the entire world. Second tape. The next tape feels different. Evidence item number 298, April 11th, 1999, just 1 week before the massacre. It's labeled Reb's tape. Reb was Harris's nickname. It starts simple, almost harmless. Harris and Claybold are sitting in a car, filming like it's just another random road trip, except it's not. Harris looks straight into the camera and says, "We're on our way to get the rest of our gear." The footage cuts, then jumps back to them driving home. They're grinning, laughing, like they just bought snacks for a party. But what they actually bought were massive fuel containers and propane tanks, key parts for their homemade explosives. The camera shuts off. When it comes back, it's only Harris. He's staring directly into the lens, and his tone changes. For the first time, he actually sounds human. He apologizes to his family, says it isn't their fault, says he loves them. He knows what he's about to do will destroy them, but he's already too far gone. 7 1/3 days left, he says, almost like he's counting down to a vacation. Then he lists 5 names, no context, just names. And then comes the journal again. He holds it up, calls it the writings of God. Inside are his violent sketches, strange notes about fate and revenge, and ramblings about destiny. The tape ends quietly, but the message is clear. This isn't just an attack. This is a legacy they want carved into history. And the second tape bundled with this one, just random school footage. Harris, Claybold, and a couple of other kids messing around with the camera. Totally normal teenage stuff, which somehow makes it even worse because in the middle of that ordinary life, this massacre was already in motion. Third tape. The final tape is the hardest one to even process. Evidence item number 333, labeled Top Secret Rampart. Authorities found it in a Sony 8mm camcorder. Columbine High School, literally scratched into the side. And this wasn't some diary-style entry. This was a mission log. It opens in Harris's house again. Weapons are spread out across the floor. Pipe bombs, sawed-off shotguns, carbines, boxes of ammo. Harris is talking straight into the camera like he's filming a how-to video, even explaining how the pipe bombs work. Claybold takes over filming while Harris poses with the guns, smiling like this is something to be proud of. Cut. Now Harris is alone in a car, camera on the dashboard, and for a moment it feels like you're watching an apology video. It's a weird feeling knowing you're about to be dead in 2.5 weeks, he says. He wonders out loud if he should do it before prom or after. Then the smile fades. His voice shakes, and he wipes away a tear. He actually begins to cry on camera, but he keeps recording. Cut again. Now they're in Claybold's room, strapping weapons to their bodies, the exact clothes they'd wear a few days later. Harris mentions Brandon Larson again, giving another oddly specific threat, one that never actually happens because, luckily, Larson survived. Then they sit down and film farewell messages. Harris speaks directly to his family, then Claybold does the same. No yelling, no theatrics, just a cold, calm goodbye. And then Harris says, "That's it. Sorry. Goodbye." Claybold leans into the camera, filling the frame, and says it again. Goodbye. The last shot is unsettling in its simplicity. The camera was left running, pointed at a wall in Harris's bedroom. On it is a piece of paper with CHS written in bold black letters, along with a crude drawing of a bomb, in the word clue. Authorities later determined this footage was recorded roughly 30 minutes before Harris and Claybold walked into Columbine High School and left a horrific stain on American history. Rest in peace to the 13 innocent people who lost their lives at Columbine High School that day. They deserve to be remembered. The shooters do not. Hidogata. The internet's full of weird lost media, old TV shows that just vanish, commercials no one remembers until somebody posts about it at 3 a.m., but there's one that still creeps people out to this day, and it came out of Japan. It's called Hidogata, which translates to white humanoids. Some people call it white people, but mostly just stick with Hidogata, which roughly translates to humanoid. The story popped up in 2004 on 2channel, one of Japan's biggest anonymous forums. Someone claimed there was this strange PSA, or maybe it was a late night commercial. No one could really agree on what it was, but everyone who said they'd seen it remembered one detail: two white, featureless human figures. No faces, no clothes, just blank humanoid shapes, standing there while the sound of a railroad crossing bell plays in the background. One fades out, another fades in, and then text appears. Some people swear there's a voiceover saying something chilling like, "Every 2 seconds, someone dies on Earth." The exact words change depending on who's telling the story, but the vibe's always the same. It's creepy, weirdly existential, and doesn't feel like something that should have aired on TV at all. But here's the weird part: no one has ever found it. No tape, no record of it in official listings, nothing. People have searched for years thinking maybe it was a school PSA, or an obscure commercial that aired once and then just vanished. And while there are tons of fan recreations and entire threads dedicated to finding it, the original thing is kinda gone. And to this day, Hidogata is one of those internet mysteries that makes you question your own memory. Maybe it's real, maybe it's some kind of mass hallucination or an example of the Mandela effect, but if it is real, someone out there still has the footage. And that's the part that creeps people out most, because if it exists, why hasn't it surfaced? It started with a thread about creepy commercials people remembered from childhood. You know the kind, those ads you see once late at night and then wonder if you imagine them. Buried in that thread was post number 854, the one that kicked off the entire legend. There was this terrifying commercial stuck in my head. Two white human figures on a black background. Railroad bell ringing on repeat. Text on screen saying something like, "Every 2 seconds, a person dies on Earth." Every time the bell rang, one figure disappeared, then reappeared, and the other one vanished. That was all anyone had to go on. No channel, no production company, not even a year it supposedly aired. Just the memory of two faceless white figures fading in and out while a death statistic showed on screen. Finding Hidogata has been almost impossible, but that hasn't stopped people from trying. For years, threads and forums have been filled with people searching for it, wondering if it was a school PSA, a late-night experimental ad, or something even stranger or darker. Yet nothing has surfaced. No tapes, no screenshots, no official records. Only that one haunting description and fan recreations trying to imagine what it might have looked like. Even the memories don't line up. Some people swear there was a railroad crossing sign on screen, while others remembered nothing but a black void behind the figures. A few claim it looked like sepia-toned, as it pulled from an old decaying tape, while others insist it was harsh black and white. The timeline is just as blurry. Some say it aired in the late 90s, others insist it was early 2000s. After years of people digging through broadcast schedules and commercial databases, the best anyone has managed to narrowing it down to somewhere between 1996 and 2003. There's even talk of a 1999 post, years before the original thread, where someone described a commercial with two monochrome people blinking on and off, alternating with a pon-pon sound, calling it one of those local PSAs that made no sense. But that thread is now gone with no archive whatsoever, leaving only secondhand memories and half-dead links. Maybe it's real, or maybe it's just a false memory that snowballed online over time, and that's what makes Hidogata so unsettling. The harder people search for answers, the blurrier the whole thing becomes. You see, there could be a pretty rational reason behind this ad, because in the time span that this ad aired, S-word rates in Japan had gone severely high. and most of them were in fact caused by railroad crossings. In that span, multiple trains had been derailed as well, killing a large number of people. So the chance of this existing isn't impossible. However, the problem is who would make such a commercial, and it's almost so obscure that a normal person wouldn't really be able to figure out the message behind it. The leading theory, and the one most people lean towards, is that Hidogata was actually just a commercial. The original testimonial even said it was only 15 seconds long, which fits perfectly with standard ad slots in Japan. But then comes the real question: what was it even advertising? That's where things get even stranger. Some think it was a drugstore ad, or maybe soap, or even jeans. Others swear it had to be the UNICEF or some NGO because of the death statistic. And of course, there's a group convinced it was a PSA, maybe about health or safety. Most of those theories have been debunked. The so-called soap commercial turned out to be a totally different ad, one that only looked vaguely similar but didn't match any eyewitness descriptions. Someone even reached out to AC Japan, the non-profit behind most Japanese PSAs, and they flat out denied ever making anything like Hidogata. Another theory pointed to Tokyoyama, a chemical manufacturer in Tokyo. There's a separate urban legend about one of their mid-90s ads, a white, featureless figure on a bluish-black background surrounded by floating white spheres, with text translating to "Chemistry is now in the unknown world." People linked it to Hidogata because of the similar imagery, but even that hasn't been proven, and that ad is its own mystery entirely. Some people believe it could have been a school safety program, maybe about railroad crossings or traffic hazards. Japan has a long history of using cartoons and even big characters like Mario for safety specials, but those programs are usually way longer than 15 seconds and rarely shown outside of schools, which brings everyone right back to square one. If Hidogata really was only 15 seconds long, chances are it was probably just a commercial. And then there's the last theory. Maybe the whole thing's just a collective false memory, a Mandela effect moment where people vividly remember something that never really existed. As of now, there's still no proof either way. No tapes, no screenshots, and nothing concrete to confirm Hidogata ever aired. But that hasn't stopped people from looking. Even though the original post dates back to 2004, search efforts have been going for over a decade. The rumor spread so much that on some forums like 5channel, moderators banned discussion of it entirely because it kept derailing unrelated threads. Still, people kept digging. In 2019, an entire thread dedicated solely to Hidogata appeared on 5channel, and since then, the search has gone global. People from all over the world are combing through VHS records, TV archives, and obscure commercial collections, still hoping to prove once and for all whether Hidogata actually existed, or if it was nothing more than a ghost story for the internet age. Christine Chubbuck. On the morning of July 15, 1974, viewers in Sarasota, Florida tuned in to the Suncoast Digest, a small local morning talk show hosted by 29-year-old reporter Christine Chubbuck. They had no idea they were about to witness one of the most infamous moments in live television history. Christine wasn't like most reporters. She hated what she called blood and guts journalism, that rising trends of sensationalized, violence-driven news coverage. And yet, behind the camera, she was fighting her own private battle with depression. In the weeks before her death, she'd volunteered to produce a segment on S-word. As part of her research, she even asked a local sheriff what kind of gun and bullets he'd use if he were ever to do it himself. She asked calmly, professionally, like it was just research for a story. But there were warning signs. One coworker recalled her saying offhand, "Wouldn't it be wild if I blew myself away on the air?" He laughed it off, thinking she was joking. What no one at the station knew was that years earlier, Christine had already tried to take her own life by overdosing on pills. And then came July 15th. That morning at WXLT started like any other. Christine even seemed cheerful, happier than usual. Nobody thought much of it until right before the show went on air. She told the crew she needed to read a news bulletin before starting, something she had never done before. It confused everyone, but they let her do it. For 8 minutes, she read the news like it was any other day. 3 national stories, nothing unusual. Then she moved to the 4th, a report of a shooting at a local restaurant. That's when the film reel jammed. Christine didn't panic. She just shrugged, turned to the camera, and delivered a line that would haunt everyone who heard it. In keeping with the WXLT practice of presenting the most immediate and complete reports of local blood and guts news, TV 40 presents what is believed to be a television first.
In living color, exclusive coverage of an attempted suicide.
The screen went black almost instantly as the technical director scrambled to cut the feed. Viewers flooded the station with calls, and even police got involved, some thinking it had to be a sick joke or some kind of stage stunt. Even Christine's coworkers thought it was a twisted prank until they saw the truth. She was rushed to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital, but her fate was already sealed. She had even planned for what came after, leaving behind a completed news script predicting she'd been taken there, and a S-word note addressed to her family and coworkers explaining she wanted everybody to see what she had done. The script she left behind was sent to national news networks, and many read it word for word in their coverage. By the following day, Christine Chubbuck was gone. And this is where the story shifts from tragedy to lost media legend. Yes, Christine Chubbuck's death happened live on television, but that doesn't mean people actually have the footage. This was 1974. Home video recorders existed, things like U-matic decks, but they were rare, expensive, and mostly used by professionals. The average person watching at home, they weren't recording live TV. So unless someone just happened to have one of those massive early VCRs running that morning, there's almost zero chance a home copy exists. For decades, people assumed that was it. If you didn't see it live, you were never going to see it at all. But the rumors didn't stop. People claimed they'd seen it floating around early websites. Others swore it had been used in FBI training videos or even appeared in shock films. But none of those claims have ever been verified, and most are considered nothing more than urban legend. Then, in 2016, everything changed. An article from Vulture revealed that the tape does exist, not in an archive, not locked down in some government vault, but in the hands of Molly Nelson, the widow of the man who once owned WXL-TV. For whatever reason, her husband had kept a copy of the broadcast, and when he passed away, it went to Molly. When word got out, people started reaching out, begging to see it. She refused, saying it made her uncomfortable, that she had only kept it to honor her husband. Eventually, she turned it over to a major law firm for safekeeping, locked away, completely inaccessible. So yes, Christine Chubbuck's S-word still exists on tape, but no one outside of that law firm has seen it in decades, and according to Molly, no one ever will. Not long after the incident, Christine's family took legal action against Channel 40, preventing them from ever releasing the footage. The 2-inch Quadmaster tape, along with a copy confiscated by the Sarasota Sheriff's Department, was turned over to the family. According to reports, both were destroyed. But then there's the rumor of a third copy. Some claim it ended up in the FCC archives, sitting quietly in a government vault. The problem? The FCC has flat out denied such a tape exists, calling the rumor baseless. Ironically, the only reason the broadcast was recorded at all was because Christine specifically asked for it. Back then, recording a live broadcast wasn't common, it was expensive, but she insisted. Decades later, in 2017, the internet erupted when a YouTuber named Nation Squid uploaded a video called Freaky 5 Lost Footage. It featured 5 pieces of creepy lost media, with Christine Chubbuck's broadcast taking the #1 spot. But what shocked everyone was at the end, the video appeared to show the S-word itself. Black and white footage, distorted audio, chaotic static. Immediately, people began dissecting it, frame by frame. Threads blew up on 4chan, Nation Squid's own forums, even Lost Media Wiki, all trying to figure out if this was the tape. Some swore it was real, others said it was staged. Nation Squid never commented, which only fueled the fire. On February 13th, 2017, the debate finally ended. Gordon Galbraith, who had been the news director at WXLT during Christine's death, confirmed the footage was fake, just another internet hoax, feeding on an already haunted story. Then, in early 2021, something new appeared. This time, not a video, but audio. A YouTuber named Atalsti claimed to have acquired a legitimate cassette recording of the broadcast from a private collector. In February, they uploaded a portion of it, the part of the newscast before Christine's S-word. Out of respect, they left out the actual moment itself. Even that short clip was chilling. The voice was unmistakably Christine's, matching other recordings of her used in the documentary Kate Plays Christine. It aligned perfectly with the news stories printed in the Sarasota Herald Tribune that day, leaving little doubt it was real. Then, in April, Atalsti uploaded the full video. Yes, including Christine's final words in the gunshot. But not for long. Both uploads were quickly made private, disappearing back into obscurity, almost as fast as they appeared. Lost briefcases. Between 1963 and 1965, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley carried out one of the darkest crime sprees in British history. They abducted and killed 5 children, burying 4 of them in the remote, desolate Saddleworth Moor. Brady was eventually caught and convicted alongside Hindley in 1966. Hindley would die in prison in 2002, while Brady went on to become Britain's longest-serving prisoner, locked away for more than 5 decades until his death on May 15, 2017. But even in death, Brady's name hasn't stopped haunting the public, because he left behind something: 2 locked briefcases. Inside those briefcases are his personal documents, which many believe could hold the key to something the victims' families have been desperate to know for decades: the exact location of Keith Bennett's body, the only victim never recovered. Over the years, there have been petitions, legal challenges, even public campaigns to open them, but the cases remain sealed, and one of Britain's darkest mysteries remains unsolved. Brady and Hindley didn't come out of nowhere. Their lives were already fractured long before they became Britain's most infamous couple. Brady had been in trouble with the law since he was a teenager, mostly for petty crimes. By the early 60s, he was working at a chemical company called Millwards, and had developed a disturbing fascination with ideology. Hindley's childhood wasn't any better. She grew up in an abusive household with a father who pushed her to be tough like him, which, in his eyes, meant solving problems with violence. She later got a job at Millwards, where she met Brady and quickly became infatuated with him. Over time, she adopted his views and even changed her appearance to fit his warped ideals. By 1962, they were officially a couple, and everything spiraled. Their first known victim was 16-year-old Pauline Reed, lured into Hindley's van on July 12, 1963, under the pretense of helping look for a lost glove. Once on Saddleworth Moor, Pauline was killed and buried in the wilderness. A few months later, they used the same tactic to lure 12-year-old John Kilbride, who also never returned home. The killings continued in 1964 with 12-year-old Keith Bennett, who disappeared while helping Hindley load boxes into her van. His body was buried somewhere on the moor and has never been found, despite decades of searches. 6 months later, they abducted a 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey, taking her to their home, where she was killed and buried as well. Evidence from that crime, including an audio recording of her final moments, later became crucial at trial, but by UK law, it remains permanently sealed. Their final victim was 17-year-old Edward Evans in October 1965, a murder Brady carried out in front of Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith, hoping to recruit him. Instead, Smith went straight to the police. By the next day, Brady was in custody, and officers had discovered Evans' body. A search of Saddleworth Moor soon revealed the remains of Leslie Ann Downey and John Kilbride. In May 1966, Brady was convicted of killing Kilbride, Downey, and Evans, while Hindley was found guilty of killing Downey and Evans. Both were sentenced to life in prison and would never walk free again. At the time, they weren't charged with the murders of Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett, but years later, both Brady and Hindley admitted their involvement. In 1987, Pauline Reed's remains were finally located. Keith Bennett's body, however, has never been found, despite decades of searches and even modern forensic technology. Hindley died in prison in 2002 at the age of 60. Brady, diagnosed as a psychopath, spent the rest of his life in a high-security psychiatric hospital, making several failed escort attempts over the years, and he died in 2017 after more than 50 years behind bars, becoming one of the UK's longest-serving prisoners. After his death, the focus shifted, not to his crimes, but to what was left behind: 2 locked briefcases. People weren't just curious about his personal notes or writings. Many believed these cases might hold the key to finally finding Keith Bennett's body. Brady seemed to know exactly how much interest there would be. Before his death, he instructed his lawyer, Robin Mackin, to keep the briefcases sealed. In 2017, Greater Manchester Police even went to court, hoping to search them for any clue about Keith's burial site. The request was denied, and there was no active prosecution to justify the order. Keith's brother Alan personally pleaded with Mackin to release the documents, believing they might finally bring closure. The police supported him, filing their own formal requests. Mackin refused every time, declining to comment on their contents and keeping the mystery alive. There's still hope, though. In March 2021, Parliament introduced the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, which introduced a new power for police: the ability to access information about undisclosed burial sites, even if the suspect is already dead. If passed, it would allow Greater Manchester Police to finally open Brady's briefcases and search for answers. But until that law moves forward, and it's still being debated, those briefcases remain locked away with Brady's lawyer, their contents unknown, in one of Britain's most haunting mysteries, unsolved. Cannibalism tapes. And before we get into this one, I did cover it briefly in the Disturbing Dark Web websites video, so if this sounds familiar, it is. But in that video, I covered it very briefly, and this is kind of more a deep dive into the lost media of it. So that's why it sounds familiar, but this is more of a deep dive. Anyways, on to the case. On March 9th, 2001, in the quiet German town of Rottenburg, 2 men met under circumstances that would horrify the world for decades to come. One was Armin Moise, a 39-year-old IT technician, an ordinary man you'd never look twice at if you passed him on the street. The other was Bernd Brandes, an engineer of about the same age. But this wasn't just a casual meeting. They weren't catching up for coffee or talking about work. This meeting had been planned for one single, horrifying reason. Brandes had agreed to let Moise kill him and eat him. This wasn't random. Moise had spent years developing a disturbing cannibalism, and it didn't stay as just a dark fantasy in his head. He took it online, back when the internet was still a wild west of chat rooms and forums where people openly shared things they'd never say out loud in real life. That's where he found the Cannibal Cafe, a now defunct forum built around cannibalism fantasies. To be clear, the site itself warned people to keep things fictional. It basically said, if you can't separate fantasy from reality, don't be here. But someone always pushes the limit. Under the alias Frankie, he posted an ad looking for a willing victim. Not roleplay, not pretend, but an actual person who would let him kill and eat them. And disturbingly, someone answered. Before Brandes, there were a few near misses. One man even showed up at Moise's house but backed out at the last minute when reality hit him. But Brandes was different. He had his own dark one that lined up perfectly with Moise. He didn't want to eat human flesh. He wanted to be eaten, and he wasn't bluffing. After trading messages, the two arranged to meet in person. Brandes knew exactly what was going to happen. He wasn't tricked. He wasn't forced. He walked straight into Moise's home, fully consenting to what came next. But what happened afterward went beyond even the darkest corners of imagination. When Brandes arrived at Moise's home, there was no hesitation. He knew exactly why he was there, what he had agreed to, and disturbingly, he seemed calm about it. Inside, the two sat down and began what would soon become one of the most infamous consensual killings in history. Brandes then wanted to begin being eaten, so Moise grabbed a knife and did what biting couldn't. What happened next was even more surreal. Brandes actually tried to eat of what had been cut off of himself, but it was too tough and too raw to swallow. So Moise decided to cook it and did all of the things with cooking, diced it, fried it in a pan, and even used some spices and marinades. And at this point, fantasy had become horrifying reality. Brandes, who had already lost a dangerous amount of blood, was placed into a bathtub where he laid for 3 hours. Maywis didn't panic, didn't call for help. He sat nearby reading a Star Trek novel while Brandeis slowly faded. Brandeis had dulled the pain with sleeping pills, alcohol, and painkillers, but eventually he couldn't fight what was happening. That's when Maywis walked over, kissed him on the forehead, and ended his life. And every moment of this was recorded. Maywis had prepared a special room just for this, a room to carry out the killing and capture it all on tape. Using his own camera, he recorded everything from the first conversation to the final moments. And through all of it, he kept posting online, talking about what he had done, even looking for a second victim. That's when someone from the Cannibal Cafe finally alerted the police. When police raided Maywis' home in December 2002, they didn't just find remains. They found a 2-hour videotape documenting everything, every single moment. And that tape quickly became one of the most infamous lost pieces of media in history. The video has never been released to the public, and for good reason. Investigators who viewed it described it as so disturbing that some journalists attending the trial later needed therapy. But the fact that it exists turned it into a legend. On forums and lost media circles, people obsess over it, debating whether supposed leaked screenshots are real, claiming to know someone who's seen it, even insisting they have secret copies. None have ever been verified. Only 4 alleged screenshots have surfaced online, and whether they're genuine is still unknown. What is certain is that the tape is real, and it's locked away by German authorities. During Maywis' trial, the tape was played once for the court and then immediately secured, never to be shown again. No official copies were released, and no bootlegs have ever been confirmed. That's why it's considered one of the most sought-after pieces of, quote, forbidden footage online. The rest of the crime scene felt like something out of a horror movie. Freezers full of labeled human meat, carefully stored bones, and that camera holding every second of what happened. This wasn't a moment of impulse. It was planned, methodical, and horrifyingly consensual. And that complicated the trial. Maywis didn't deny a thing. He admitted to every detail calmly, explaining the online messages, the agreement with Brandeis, and that Brandeis wanted to die. So the question became, was this murder or assisted S-word? At first, the court leaned towards manslaughter, giving him 8 years, but public outrage pushed for a retrial in 2005. This time, the court called it what it was: murder. Maywis was sentenced to life in prison, where he still is today at Kassel Prison in Germany. And alright guys, that wraps up some disturbing lost media. This video was horrifying and disturbing, and comment down below what you thought about this. These cases were utterly disgusting, but interesting in a weird sort of morbid fashion. I don't know. Comment down below if you'd like to see another lost media video in the future. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was very interesting and a more dark turn to lost media. But I appreciate you all watching. Thank you so much. It means the world. Check out other videos on the channel. I'm sure you'll love them as well. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next time. Bye.